and welcome to a whole new episode of your program Windows. As you all know that we're always keen to shed more light on some interesting and diverse topics, and also on addition of the remarkable events that took place here in Egypt. And one of those remarkable events is the visit of the French President Emmanuel Macron, which not only tackled some political files, but also it reached the economy and the educational file. And to know more about it, I'm so delighted over here to be accompanied by Monsieur, the Professor Pierre, and he's the French international educational expert. Welcome to our studio, sir.
Good evening. Well, thank you for having me here.
Thank you for being with us.
Yeah.
Well, of course, this visit just shed more light on more protocols, more agreements, and as we all know that Egypt and France, since ages and since in the back time, we have already educational cooperation, schools and all of that. But we need to know from you the importance of the MOU and the dual degree, and what is the dual degree, what's all about it, and just tell us more info about it, please.
Okay, maybe we can start to explain why this focus on higher education and the relationship with the labor market. First of all, I guess we must understand that higher education is related with national and international labor market. Why? Because at a time where we're facing a globalization of economy, it's very important to improve the structure of the labor market with better qualified labor force. What is better qualified? What higher education provides? In fact, a better knowledge, better mastering of the new technology, for example, and also more adaptation to the technical evolution that our society are facing. It means that the better qualified you are, the better you can adapt to any change related to technological change or economic international changes. And higher education, it means also that you focus on, let's say, two logical. The first one is the classical one, the entrance of the new students on the labor market. But there is also behind higher education the, let's say, now common evolution for regular employees when they want to have a new job, a new position, a higher position. They need to acquire higher skills that has to be certified and recognized. This is the relationship between higher education and labor market. Then also we need to understand that this MOU is an international agreement, and this international agreement, it's also because you're not only thinking about the employability of your national in the national labor market, but also at an international level. So if you are Egyptian, for example, and you want to work abroad, how can I be sure that my diploma, that all my skill will be recognized in European market, labor market, French market, if we don't know if we share the same methodology, the same goal, the same skills in a diploma of engineer, for example. So it means that it's a global movement of uniformization and of a recognition of the skills and of the knowledge and of the education of every countries. It started, most of it, with, let's say, American influence, and now this MOU is something, you see, more related with alternative strategy related with France and Europe. So this is maybe what is important to understand. It means also that this MOU facilitates the mobility between the two countries, facilitate the recognition of what is done to qualify better the employees. This has let's say, has started, as you said, from a long time, but it's also something that we can see in the private sector. For example, just a couple of months ago, Sira Education launches his platform to develop, let's say, a global strategy on the care, to have better qualified people around the care for children, for disabled persons, for old people. And they clearly explained that it will have two goals. One for the internal national market, because in a couple of years we will have lots of old people in Egypt, for example, and also one related with the employability of Egyptian in, let's say, German market, for example, or Canadian market. So it leads us to understand that this MOU is part of the global strategy to empower, I would say, the Egyptian diploma by a better recognition from France and also from Europe in this situation. France has an international, let's say, power about that. What is the interest of France in that? Now it's also, you can see, kind of soft power to increase the influence and the recognition of his savoir-faire, of his expertise in the higher education, because it's one of the most prestigious sector in the economy. It's also related with research, and we will go for that after.
Yeah, and of course, we can talk about research now, since, of course, one of the pillars that have been happening, this not just an agreement, the visit of His Excellency Minister of Higher Education, the French Minister of Higher Education, meeting with His Excellency, the Egyptian Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, which really provoked lots of ideas, agreements, and different fields. Now, research is not only combined in laboratory or such, so it's expanding, it's the AI, it's technology, it's the tech in every field, when it comes to medicine, when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to greenery, sustainable development, name it. And this also adds another phase of educational sector, which is, it's not only the base of the basic education, it's the innovation and it's the globalization in different fields, which other nations can benefit from each other, of course. And this is the agenda of the upcoming agenda, not only for Egypt but also global-wise. We have the 2030 agenda, which indulge all the sectors, and the AI, the technology, and more info, more probably materials to be studied. And this, you can tell us more. This is, you are the expert here.
I mean, you're right. You're definitely right. It has to be understood in a logical of diversification of this cooperation. At the beginning, as we were talking about before, it's probably start, let's put it a bit simple, with Egyptology and laws. As you know, the special relationship we had from historical time with a very famous French that did things in Egypt we can maybe judge a little bit, how can I say, a little bit controversial, let's put it like that. But if we come back to a closer and more recent stage, let's say, for example, the beginning of the 2000s, we can see that in 2002, this cooperation leads to two things. First, the foundation of the French university, Egyptian French University, UFE, and also one international or cooperational program of research, IMOTEP, that was mentioned by Dr. Ines, I forgot, Mazen in genetics, for example. And so we can see that it's spread over, because they also mentioned that it helps to do a cartography of the 3D, in 3D of the King Valley. So it goes from medicine to every aspect.
History, exactly. To every aspect, to different fields. This is what I'm talking about.
And related to technology. So this, for example, was the beginning in 2002. So you see it's something like 25 years almost. And then we had very quickly some other meeting, like in 2019 and 2024. And always there was this idea of straighten the L'Université Française d'Égypte, The dual degree we will talk about because it was part of the MOU, and also languages instruction, because you see it's related with the soft power of France to promote French in with the cultural linguistic diversity, English and Arabic, of course. And also the research opportunity, the expansion of let's say, innovative program. Research is very important because it's the way you can be recognized like an important country that can help, let's say, the global world to find new solution, technical, medical, or whatever. So you have to exist on that. And when you have this kind of collaboration, you can be part of the top. That's the opportunity for France also to stay in the top for archaeology, because there is this close relationship between France and Egypt about Egyptology, for example. So this is the global panorama in which this MOU take part. This MOU, as you quickly evoked, it was with 42 protocols of collaboration signed, and it's an update of this strategy. It means also, when we were talking about the private sector, that we are at a public level. What does it change? First of all, it's a question of affordability and giving access to the maximum of students to reasonable and high quality programs, educational programs. So this is first. Then also it's related with what you said, the national policy of development backed by both countries and where they have the common interest. As you explained, there is Egypt 2030, but there is also the UN Sustainability Development Goals, the 17th, that France also wants to fulfill totally. So they have this common interest. The one we can highlight, we already highlight, is the AI and new tech. But you have also the climate change, exactly, which is also something very important from France, because there was this famous COP21 with the Paris Agreement. So we want to be seen as promoting the research, the education.
Sustainable development.
Exactly. And we have also about law, about cultural heritage, and maybe a quick comment on that. It's interesting to see cultural heritage is something shared by Egypt and France, because both of them have a very prestigious and internationally renowned heritage. And France is also trying to promote this kind of cultural exception. That means that culture is not a market. Culture has its own rule, and it's a partnership, and it's Egypt is an ally in this, for example, diplomacy about culture. So the MOU took place in this agreement, and the idea is to develop the recognition. So we will have this a quick explanation about the dual degree. What does it mean? Dual degrees mean that it's validated by the two ministries of France, ministries of Egypt. Why it is important? As we said at the beginning, if I am an Egyptian and I've made my degree here, how can I be recognized outside of Egypt?
In the labor market.
In the labor market. And how can I be recognized also in terms of science or whatever if I'm alone in my site? And all this idea is a collaboration. It's collaboration with France, but also collaboration with Europe, and we'll see also with Francophonie, because it's very strategic. And this international dimension is not only between two countries, but it's also between, let's say, different eras of influence. So this is the global. Maybe a quick panorama also about this French university. What are we talking about? We talked about Université Française d'Égypte, but all the main universities of Egypt promoted French curriculum. You've got, of course, University of Cairo that developed partnership about law, for example, international affairs, science politics. You have also Ain Shams that promoted this kind of things. So you see, it's also a way to expand on the different sector we were talking about. Of course, there is some engineering program. And what is interesting also is to see that this can lead to a competition, for example, small competition, of course, with AUC, because AUC also, for example, include
Has a French sector.
Exactly. AUC, GUC, and also the British. So this is the global. Maybe a quick panorama. There is some other program in public university, Egyptian public university. I would just highlight the University Senghor of Alexandria because it's a francophone university. What does it mean? It means also that Egypt is very integrated in the francophone influence. Maybe we can go, I don't know, in some details.
It's also ranked, it's like very affiliated with the French education because 37 schools are already affiliated to the Ministry of Education, the French Ministry of Education. And also it's not just that, we have lots of schools here in Egypt that since the 18th and the 19th century, that was the start. And talking about the 20th century, that we're talking about more and more research and more AI and more technology, but the basic. So now we need to know also the difference between the international and the national education, the French.
Okay, so about the secondary, you mean?
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to understand. This is depending on the curriculum you're teaching in these schools. So as you said, there is 15 international French schools. These international French schools, it's part of an agreement, not higher education, but secondary, so the Ministry of Education. Ministry of Education of France, Ministry of Education of Egypt. Because we're in Egypt, it's the Ministry of Education, of National Education of Egypt who authorized this kind of teaching. So it's under the authorization. This is worked with the diplomatic, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and this school, for example, provided the French program, which means the same as the one provided in France, but also providing worldwide through what is called AEFE, Agence de l'enseignement français à l'étranger, which is globally, let's say, quickly speaking, the national agency for French education abroad. So how does it work? It means that you have the French program, so it means it has to be validated by the French Ministry of Education. So this school, for example, have a special standard. They are every 5 years under auditing from the National Ministry of France. You've got inspector coming from France, checking that the methodology, the contents, the values of the system and national education
are applied.
Are applied. This is the 51. The other one, it's, let's say, first we'll say that it's a mix resulting from the long history of relationship between Egypt and France, because, for example, one of the oldest is l'École de la Salle, or you've got also Sacré-Cœur, les Jésuites, everything. Everybody knows these very famous schools. And this was from the mid-19th century. So it means even before the national education in France, because national education in France started in 1980s. So they started before. And at that time, who were responsible for the education in France? It was the religious most of the time. And they were so prestigious that some countries like Turkey, like Egypt, wanted to have these standards for their own elites, for their own sake, to develop secondary education. Historically, it started like that. Then they also need a recognition about what they were providing. So there is a specific agreement. This specific agreement is this time that Egypt is providing its curriculum, its content, its methodology, but they want a recognition for the French language level. So it means that this time it's more going through the French Cultural, l'Institut Français d'Égypte, French Institute of Egypt, that provide, and let's say Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that provide a label that is recognized by France. So if you go through this national education system, you don't have to pass, for example, a language exam to show that
other
you're...
exams to show that you
Yes.
are into the
Yes.
French education, right?
Yes, exactly. So that's how it works, and it's something very dynamic because it's full expansion. You know that Egyptian secondary school are a market in expansion. Maybe we can come back also what I wanted to say about Francophonie, because if we go back to higher education, why Francophonie is important, and you see why we talk about language, because part of the relationship Egypt will have in his market for expansion will be MENA region, North Africa, Morocco and Algeria. Of course they speak Arabic, but they also speak French.
French-spoken Arabic nation.
And sometimes, exactly, sometimes it's maybe easier to go through French than exchanging in Moroccan Arabic and Egyptian Arabic,
Exactly.
because it's a bit difficult. And more seriously, you will have all the under Africa speaking countries like Gabon, like Mali, related. And when you see already Leopold Sédar Senghor University, when you look at the figures of the nationalities that are studying in Egypt, so I just checked that before coming, it was 119 nationalities that are studying in Egypt.
Yes.
So it means also part of this Francophonie. So one part of attraction for Egypt is also that this agreement is also a gateway and a way to develop this strategical alliance, because we need also to remember to the public that Egypt was one of the founders of the Francophonie Agency, because it's an integration of Africa this time, and we had very famous secretary for the Francophonie Agency like Boutros Ghali, that were secretary of Francophonie just after being UN General Secretary. And you can see also how soft power is working between Egypt and France. It means that this language, this cultural environment, this cultural islands is also values that can bring alliance to have a better recognition in UN, in all the international association. And higher education with Francophonie means that you expand a certain knowledge, a certain recognition of your employability.
On another scale.
Exactly. So that was the point on
the higher education. We don't want to forget that Egypt was recently ranked at the 4th label.
If we go back, so it's a bit like that. Yes.
Yes.
So this language is very important for Egypt, and it's not surprising. And higher education, you see, it's related also with secondary education, because it's much easier if you had secondary education to go for French university, even if French universities in Egypt are open also for non-French speaker. It's always question of integration. When can we enter to this system? And on the secondary level, this network we were talking about, it's true, it's the 4th network, especially on the French international school. It's the 4th network in the world for France.
Egypt,
The 3 first before are, not a surprise, Lebanon,
100%.
Not a surprise, Morocco.
Those
A bit of a surprise, Spain, but it's not so surprising as well. But you see how it works, and you see what is the special connection between France and Egypt, because the force is Egypt. It could have been Germany, but it's not. You see, it's very interesting.
It could be Algeria.
It could have been Algeria, but
Tunisia.
we had such a traumatic history with Algeria that the network of the school is very limited for other reasons. But it's true that it shows what is the degree of cooperation and of proximity, let's say, on every values between the countries. So here, yes, the fourth network for secondary schools. Maybe we can also see that we were talking about Francophonie, we were talking about finally the relationship between Egypt and Africa, but behind this agreement also there is, as you see, European university, European network that is part of, let's say, the package of the bride that that brings to this MOU. How does it come? How does it work? We talked about the cooperation between Egypt and France on higher education from a long time. Actually, it was older than the higher education cooperation with Europe. That is always surprising, but now we must say that the relationship is tighter with European university, of course, through a program that maybe you've heard about, which is called Erasmus+. Erasmus+, first, it's an agency that started in end of the 80s, and it gave the opportunity to, let's say, materialize the partnership the university wanted to do, kind of MOU, but this time at a European level. And it helped, as we said, you will see the parallel, to uniformize the methodology of learning, like the bachelor, master degrees, ECTS,
the after the basic learning.
Yes, it's a basic standards, so that all the university of Europe are working with the same standard. It makes it much easier to recognize the diploma, and it's very useful, especially in Europe when it's an open market. When you're Spanish, for example, you don't need papers, specific papers, to arrive to work in France or in Germany. But how come, if your diploma is Spanish, how Germany can know that your diploma is the same value? So they had this necessity, and it's very related, because the opening of the market, really, it's 94 in Europe with Maastricht and everything. So 87 you start your cooperation. You see the connection. So they started like that with, in 87 they did the Erasmus agency, and it helps with mobility, and maybe we will come back to that also for the MOU. Mobility of students, so kind of program, research, exchange, publication, and it starts also with a framework for teaching languages, the European framework for teaching languages. And maybe it will lead us also to see that all these tools are also re-injected into the secondary, because the way you uniformize the recognition of the level of language is very important for teaching it. So that's here also from where it comes. But I come back to my point, and just let me know if I'm not clear.
It's okay.
And so they started with that. With the mobility, maybe we can have word from that, because the MOU also include facilitation for the students to go abroad. And most of the time, when you do a dual degree, you want the students to come to your country for economical reasons, but also for, let's say, strategical, make new ambassadors of your country. So now this dual degree most of the time means that you have at least one semester in France, or two, 1 year or one semester. And this started with Erasmus. Erasmus was a mobility exchange program for students of university. Then it went to secondary, by the way. Now Erasmus program includes also mobility for the secondary. But at the time, you were going into, let's say, I'm French student, and at that time I was a student. I could have been in Austria.
Anywhere in the world, as long
anywhere
as you're
in Europe.
affiliated with the dual.
Yes, and anywhere in Europe. And this also now means it could be potentially open to Egyptians that goes in this kind of curriculum. If they have, for example, let's say international studies, they can go for 1 semester. They have 1 year of, let's say, foreign program. They will go first to France for 1 semester. Most probably they will stay, to be honest, because it's quite complicated to change from your country to another. So every 6 months changing country, it's a bit complicated. But they will most probably stay in France. But they could, theoretically, go from the French university they are hosted to a German university that is partnered with the French
with
one.
the French part.
So it shows also the integration of Egypt to, let's say, the European environment in terms of higher education, but also other issues like economical issue, labor market, and all other things. And you see, for this, for example, it's very interesting to compare with Turkey, as we said before, because Turkey is also having a bit the same history, starting with secondary school, very old, from the 16th century, because the relationship between France, for example, and Turkey were also older with François Ier and the Grand Ambassador. So the first one, I guess, started in the mid-16th century, but after that it was 19th, like Turkey, Egypt. This Francophile period where French language was the language of international, and you see now we have this attraction for English school, British English language and everything, because it's the way
it's normal. It's where you want to have better education and
and now if you want a better education, you think first, okay, we should learn English, without realizing that you can learn English, for example, and speak a better English than mine if you go in a French school now, because international French school provide English, for example. It's obvious. This is now the language you need to include in all your curriculum. And that's why, for example, the MOU includes French, English, and Arabic. Of course, Arabic.
Yeah.
It shows also, let's say, a will to promote from a French side more Arabic language, even if it's a bit difficult to promote for let's say internal reason of France. I don't want to go into that, but it's specific. But you see, you have this kind of, okay, plurilingualism is now a main issue of higher education, of secondary education, in our labor market, because the more language you speak is like your diploma. The more adaptive you are, because you can interact, and if you go only through English, everybody is doing it now. So, and you lost part of the information, because I'm translating from French to English. I'm not a native speaker in English. I'm not bilingual in English. So I'm translating. So part of what I want to say is lost in the translation. If we go, your English is much better than mine. You don't have this issue. But if I go, let's say, with someone with the same level of English than me from Arabic, he will lost part of, and we realize on the labor market, for example, that when you go through English, it's less efficient than, let's say, a lower mastering of French. But if we speak French together, it's my language. So I can understand and I can see better where there is a loss of information. If we do the same with Arabic, you will understand, okay, here it's not clear enough. So probably it's confusing, and you can see what could be the possibilities. So this language also issue is very important in higher education and in secondary education.
Well, I think this is a very interesting topic when it comes not only to education, but also the way that students can exchange culture, exchange mindset, build new mindset actually with this globalization, with this traveling here, traveling there. It gives them the self-confidence and, of course, more to enhance in their educational journey. But let's go to a quick report, and we'll be back.
Egypt and France have launched a new phase of strategic cooperation in higher education and scientific research, with joint academic programs and linking education to industry among their top priorities. The initiative was highlighted at the Egyptian-French Forum for Higher Education and Scientific Research, which focused on innovation and the internationalization of higher education. The forum, which began on Monday and concluded on Tuesday, coincided with French President Emmanuel Macron's visit to Cairo. It has brought together approximately 400 participants from over 100 Egyptian and French institutions, including university presidents and leaders in higher education and scientific research. The event was being held under the patronage of Ayman Ashour, Egypt's Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, and Philippe Baptiste, the French Minister of Higher Education. The internationalization is a fundamental pillar of the Egyptian strategy and Egypt's Vision 2030. The National Strategy for Higher Education and Scientific Research seeks to modernize Egypt's higher education system to address local and global challenges, enhance education and research quality, and align educational outcomes with the needs of the labor market. The strategy's 7 core principles: integration, interdisciplinarity, communication, effective participation, sustainability, international benchmarking, and innovation, as well as entrepreneurship. The importance of the forum in reinforcing international benchmarking, adding promoted students and academic exchanges, and encouraging participation in global research networks and collaborative programs. There is a big need to diversify funding sources for higher education through government support, private sector involvement, donations, and strategic partnerships, alongside optimizing resource allocation within educational institutions. Innovation and entrepreneurship would be cultivated by strengthening university-based business incubators and innovation hubs, encouraging students to develop their ideas into development projects. There is a big importance of integrating sustainable development goals into educational and research agendas and integrating advanced technologies like artificial intelligence and e-learning into the educational framework.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're still following up with our episode with my dear guest, Monsieur Jean-Pierre. Well, we were talking about educational exchange, how important it is to see another world of different criteria, of different educational mindset, but also this leads us to the exchange, culture exchange, mindset exchange. So we need to know more about that.
Yes, as you said, it's kind of openness on the world and of the specificity of every culture. And we were talking about Francophonie and linguistic diversity, and also, in fact, cultural diversity. Because when you learn, for example, another language, you don't have the same values. You realize that they don't have the same words for the same thing. And the same, when you're traveling to a new country, you can realize that what you were thinking for granted as, let's say, changed, exactly. Yeah. You don't have the same landmarks. And it's very important coming to higher education as well, because you need to interact with international community now. So you need to be able to understand and to have these skills. Now we talked about intercultural skills in terms of soft skills, the capacity of understanding, okay, where lies the misunderstanding. You can't maybe identifying, but you can see that there is a cultural misunderstanding and change your attitude to make it explicit. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't get it. Maybe because for me, I do like that, and I don't want to be rude or whatever. So this is part also of the global benefits, and it's not only about knowledge, as you said, it's also what we call a savoir-être. It's not only a savoir-faire, which means how to make it, it's also how to be in interaction with the global world. And this is also very important, more, let's say, open-mindedness towards other culture, other countries.
And we need an addition also, what about, of course, culture is everything. It's, I think culture is a pillar where nations can get closer easily. It's the soft power, it's all of that. And also one of the interesting things that happened also this week is the visit of the French President Emmanuel Macron to some touristic and historical places. I think that was very warming when it comes to the French nation to see their president working around and just trying to figure more of old Egypt.
Yeah, I'm very happy he went to this place, because this place, when you think about it, most of the times it's a bit aside from the, let's say, main classics of Egypt. And this shows that he's got a good knowledge about Egypt. And for me, Shera Moez is the heart of Cairo history, and not antique history, but the modern city took his roots in this place. So I'm very happy that he went to this place, because it's picturesque, of course, but it's also very popular. And I guess there is this will to show that the two nations have kind of very close relationship, and that we have this let's say mutual respect, first of all, as you said, but also mutual affection and from the people itself, because he was very well welcomed. But it's also the case when an Egyptian is arriving in France, and when the president was coming, there was this love and this affection for Egypt that bind our two countries from such a long time. And I just thought about, in terms of history for the president of France coming, that this affection is also sometimes kind of deeper than that also, when you thought about François Mitterrand that spent most of his last days in Aswan, in of course the prestigious Old Cataract Hotel. But just before dying, he felt the need to come back to Egypt. So we have this special relationship between our two culture, I guess, also, that make us understand so well, I guess.
Well, I bet on that, because we are very close nations. We have different, we have the same mindset when it comes to innovation and putting more effort in education, putting more effort on progress in diverse fields here in Egypt. Of course, we're all seeking the same goals internationally also.
Yes, and respect for the diversity and the other culture. That's something that, at a personal level, I was always stricken when I arrived in Egypt. The way that Egyptians are always showing respect to foreigners when they arrive, when they don't do the appropriate thing. I never felt hostility. I always felt understanding. And when you don't know the Egyptian culture, you can't see that you made a mistake. And then when you get used to that, okay, you see, okay, this time I realized, because he was surprised, doesn't show ever anything, but it was not the adequate movement, it was not adequate. So I like also this kind of great respect for other culture that you can see in Egypt. And I hope that we share as a French people.
Well, unfortunately, we came to the end of this episode. Time flies, and I was so delighted to be accompanied with the Professeur Jean-Pierre Barnaud, and he's the French international educational expert. Thank you so much for being with me, and thank you for the information. That was appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's all for this episode. Promise to be back next week with more digestible. Until then, let's go.